Story 14. My new girlfriend cheated on me on the first date. I get a new girlfriend. I, 26M, met a girl, 25F. We'll call Gia a few weeks ago. We met at the local LA Fit. I've noticed her there over the last few months, and we started chatting. She's got a bubbly personality and seems to be a social butterfly. Lots of energy. She's extremely attractive and knows it. The only real red flag I'm concerned about is her constant talk about going out to clubs with her friends. It's like she's obsessed with it. I wanted to get out in front of that, so I explained I wasn't interested in seeing someone already dating other guys. After a couple of weeks of seeing each other, we were out to eat after the gym, and she commented that I hadn't made a move on her yet. I told her I don't do that unless I'm in a committed relationship. She looked at me and asked what I meant. I just said that until there is a commitment, I won't sleep with anyone. This is my policy with women that I'm unsure of. There are a lot of women out there now who seem to want this friends with benefits approach to dating. I'm not interested in sharing a woman with anyone, and Gia was pretty obviously into the clubbing scene. Gia assured me she agreed. Gia said I had nothing to worry about. She only dated one person at a time. I tend to take people at their word, so I was good, but I always use protection because I don't want to be a parent right now. Gia and I ended up spending more time together, and it seemed like we were a great match. Over the next week, Gia spent more time at my place than hers and talked me up to her friends. That Friday night was our first real date and our last. Gia had introduced me to many of her friends, and I was invited to go out with them. I had assumed that Gia would hang out with me and her friends once at the club, but I could tell she wanted to dance. A couple of people in the group looked uncomfortable being at the club and kept looking at me. One was a college friend of Gia's, a stunning, athletic, auburn-haired woman named Rachel. Gia and I danced for a while, and then I came back to sit out a bit as most of her friends went out on the floor. While they were dancing, I sat near Rachel and started talking. Once Rachel and I started talking, the evening flew by. During our conversation, she talked about growing up in a blended household. Her mother was from Thailand, and her dad was as Irish as anyone. She had finished her master's in chemical engineering and was looking to return to school for her PhD. I danced a few more times with Gia, but she was in her social butterfly mode. A while later, Rachel got up and excused herself to go to the bathroom, and I sat back, looking around. I could pick out some of Gia's friends, but I couldn't see her anywhere near me. A few minutes later, Rachel came back and sat down. She had a really confused and annoyed look on her face, so I asked her if she was okay. Rachel looked at me briefly and asked if I'd seen Gia recently. I told her I hadn't seen her in half an hour. Rachel said she was over by the ladies' restroom talking to some guy. From how she said it, I could tell something was wrong. I asked her what it was, and Rachel paused before telling me I should go check it out for myself. I looked toward the bathroom, sighed, and started working through the crowd. As I got near the ladies' room, the number of people dropped off significantly, but a few couples were hanging out in a room best described as a waiting area. Some couches lined the wall with couples paired off together. This was an area people used for more intimate lap dancing. In the darkest corner, I saw Gia standing in front of a guy, dancing for him. This guy's hands were all over her as she ground her body to the music. I just stood there watching. As the music continued, she leaned over and started making out with the guy, and his hands moved up her legs and disappeared under her miniskirt. With a bit of wiggling around, Gia adjusted her stance to open up her legs enough for him to get his hands where he wanted. Gia continued to dance as much as his hand let her. Then the guy's hand started moving under her skirt from behind as fast as he could make it move. I had my phone out and took a quick video that lasted about 20 seconds, showcasing her finger dancing skills. Just as I started walking away, Gia happened to look around to make sure that what they were doing wasn't too noticeable. Just as she turned and looked in my direction, I turned and walked back to the seating area. I'm positive that Gia had to have seen me. I don't know if she realizes how much I witnessed, but she was back at the table a few minutes after me. When I arrived at the table, Rachel asked me if I found her, and I told her I had. I gave her my phone with the camera app still open. She laughed and asked if she could have the video, so I airdropped it to her and 10 or so other people. I just started spamming it to everyone that showed up on AirDrop. She looked at my last video showing this guy finger blasting Gia's back door. Rachel sneered at the video in disgust and said she was sorry I had to see that. I took a deep breath, gave out a laugh, and told her I had only wasted a couple of weeks. Some laughs were also coming from people watching their phones around us. Rachel giggled and raised her glass to me as Gia came out of the crowd towards us. I'm not sure what Rachel was expecting, but I had no real feelings for Gia since we'd only briefly known each other. Aside from the embarrassment of having her cheat on me with another guy on our first real date, I was fine. I'd had way more fun talking to Rachel that night than I'd ever had with Gia. As Gia walked up, I could see her eyes were searching my face. I just smiled at her and asked if she was having fun. She nervously said yes, and she asked me if I was okay. People were starting to look at us, more specifically at Gia. I told her I was fine, just listening to the music and chatting with Rachel. She gave Rachel a neutral look and said, "Okay." She looked at me again in an odd way, then said she was ready to leave if I was done dancing. Rachel said she was ready too. Gia went to find the rest of her friends, and Rachel took my phone from me for a couple of minutes and texted herself with it. Then she texted me back with her full contact info and gave me a mysterious smile. By the time Gia was back with her friends, most of them had annoyed looks from being pulled off the dance floor or away from other distractions. One of her friends told her she was staying and bailed on Gia. Rachel walked next to me, continuing our conversation from earlier, ignoring Gia's glare. We hopped into her friend's SUV and started heading to the closest drop-off. Gia had attempted to sit next to me, but Rachel slid into the middle seat, leaving Gia on the other side of her. I could tell that Gia was angry with what Rachel did, but Rachel just kept talking with me like nothing was wrong. As the car is heading through the city streets, Gia finally comments to Rachel about how sitting next to her boyfriend would have been nice. Without missing a beat, Rachel goes, "If you're talking about the guy who had his fingers up your BH, he's still back at the club." Gia was stunned and started stammering that Rachel was full of crap. I looked out the window, trying not to laugh, and Rachel said, "Gia, I saw you dancing with the guy by the bathroom. Your boyfriend went to find you and has a video of the dude fingering your butt." Gia starts screaming at Rachel, so Rachel pulls out her phone and sends the video to the chat group we used to coordinate the trip. She looks right at Gia and says, "Wasn't this your first date? What you did is messed up in so many ways." Gia's other friends start in on Gia after watching the video, and Gia shuts down and ignores us. As I was being dropped off, Rachel asked me if she could catch a ride from me to her house, and I said of course. Gia was mad that Rachel got out of the car and started following us. She ran up to me, grabbing my arm. She started begging, asking me if she could do something to make it right. I told her she could just go home without making a scene. She started crying, saying she was sorry over and over, trying to pass it off as a misunderstanding. I calmly told her, "You knew what you were doing, so we're done as a couple." I told her that I wished her the best and extended my hand to Rachel. Rachel took my hand and started walking with me to my apartment. Gia bombarded my phone with VM and text messages. She also hit me up on social media. I blocked her online after asking her to please just let it go. Thankfully, she never did show up at the gym again. Rachel and Gia stopped talking after one last nasty exchange. Rachel and I started unofficially dating that very night. Rachel spent the night, and we cuddled and laughed about what happened until we fell asleep. This was almost 2 years ago. For those of you who are interested, Rachel and I are engaged and will be married at the end of summer 2023. It's strange how something as terrible as someone sticking their finger in your date's butt can lead to the best thing that ever happened. I know that my experience differs from most, but guys should know that many women can't be trusted these days. Something has broken in our society over the last few years, so make sure you approach relationships with some common sense. If anyone ever brings up body count, walk away. I only post new and unique content. Please like and subscribe.